Hi, this is Ryan from SpringvilleOnline.com, and I want to clear a few things up because I've gotten negative emails, mostly from family and from one pastor and some LDS friends that have commented on my alias on the internet that I call myself Reverend Ryan. And I do that because I do preach and I do teach and I do discuss sermons and doctrines. I have two different YouTube accounts that I've made videos for this, and I've had by what authority, of course, because Mormons believe they've got the only authority in Christ and that they are the only true church, and so how could I possibly compete with that, because they've got the priesthood and such. I've also had a negative response from my old pastor Blake in Springville because I took my daughter to HempFest to enjoy people using their First Amendment rights and show her what liberty is about way back in 2008. And so, with the fact that I've been arrested for marijuana, I've spent time in jail, that I support legalization, whatever. They doubt the claim that I'm a reverend or an ordained minister. In fact, I am an ordained minister. I got ordained in 2009, in March of 2009, from the Universal Life Church, and I feel very comfortable with calling myself Reverend Ryan. Now, when I call myself Reverend Ryan, let me just clear a few things up and what it means to me. First of all, I did not declare myself or get ordained as a minister to be a leader of anybody, to be considered perfect, to erase any of my past. None of that. My alias is basically because I want to have the discussion of scriptures and doctrines, and I think that invites that conversation. Never once have I joined an organized religion, except for when I was 8 years old and I was forced to by my grandfather. Never after that did I join any other church. I did get my name removed from the LDS church records in the year 2000, and I didn't get excommunicated. I willingly and voluntarily requested my name to be removed from the LDS church records and to cancel my membership with the LDS church. I did get baptized by Pastor Gene Short in the Provo River back in 2001. No. It was after I got back. Yeah, it was 2001. It was April of 2001 that I got baptized by Pastor Gene Short. I didn't do it to join the church, and I never signed any membership information, and I may have donated or contributed or been a part of the fellowship, but never did I do that to become a member of anything. I hate mob mentality. It's just not my thing. I'm not into joining groups for the power or the strength or to elevate myself in any way. That's not why I did it. I did it because I have a firm belief that Christ is my Lord, that humans were intelligently designed by an intelligent being, and that the scriptures make a lot of sense to me, and I believe that those are the right ways to live. Never have I thought that I live perfectly or that I follow those doctrines perfectly. Wouldn't claim that at all. Probably one of the least of most who claim to follow those doctrines. I am probably one of the least. But I do study a lot, and I do like the discussions. So to my Mormon friends who say, well, you can't possibly be a man of God and support marijuana legalization or use marijuana. You can't drink, you can't, they tell me all the things, the criteria that I need to follow to be able to, claim any kind of spiritual faith. And I have to make it very clear to them, because they're Mormon and they can't drink coffee, they can't drink tea, they can't drink alcohol. Otherwise, if they do, they can't go to the Mormon temple, and they have disfellowshipment or excommunication as a consequence in many cases. So they are really forbidden. It's outlawed in the Mormon Church to use these substances, many of which are God-given and grown out of the ground, and are spoke about in the Bible. The thing is that if you want to talk about it in a biblical perspective, I think it's Deuteronomy 14:26. Is it? I believe that's where Moses is told by God that in your tithe or your offerings to me, take with you the things I tell you, and go to the places in which I tell you to go, and dine and rejoice in me, and take unto yourself wine and strong drink, and whatever thy soul desire, and and worship me. And that's Deuteronomy 14:26. That's what that is. And that's a biblical perspective. Jesus was a wine bibber, and he drank wine, and it wasn't just grape juice. I mean, they harvested in the fall. Passover was in the spring. It had 6 months to ferment. It was wine. It was fermented wine, and I'm sure it had fermented longer than 6 months. But that was the gap. The earliest gap in which you would drink it, and 6 months is plenty of time for fermentation. So the apostles and Jesus drank wine. Moses drank strong drink and wine, and it talks about it all over the Bible, Psalms and Proverbs as well. Now, certainly we shouldn't get drunk according to scriptures, but drinking isn't a sin. God gave us a brain, and God gave us self-control, and God gave us the Holy Spirit to guide us, and we should be able to regulate that ourselves, not with laws or authority, but with our own conscience and our guidance from the Holy Spirit, in my opinion. So and according to the scriptures as well. Now, as far as an LDS perspective is concerned, we can talk about that for a long time, because Joseph Smith opened a bar in the Nauvoo mansion. When he was the mayor of Nauvoo, he opened the bar, and Porter Orrin Rockwell ran the bar, and they sold all kinds of whiskey and spirits and wine and strong drink. And Joseph Smith in History of the Church and Times and Seasons, you can read all over that Joseph Smith drank and smoked tobacco. And in Carthage jail, he gave the guard $1 for a bottle of wine and some tobacco, and they drank and smoked. And that was right before his death. So he was preparing for his death, and he knew he was about to meet his maker, and he didn't have any problems with consumption of mind-altering substances. And I have a feeling that if ganja or cannabis or marijuana would have been around at that point, there would have been some cannabis usage too, quite honestly. And it is a biblical sacrament. I mean, you look at Exodus 30:23. You look at what they call cannabosum, or in the English translation, fragrant cane. Area Kaplan, who is a professor and a rabbi at Tel Aviv University, was a professor there, talks about how cannabis or marijuana is what they call cannabosum in Hebrew, or fragrant cane in English, in Exodus 30:23. So cannabis is a biblical sacrament. That's pretty common knowledge these days. And you can read his book called The Living Torah to learn more about that. But you can read about Brigham Young, who opened up a whiskey distillery in Utah. So after Joseph had died, and they moved all the saints over to Utah, and Brigham Young smoked tobacco. They had spittoons for chewing tobacco in the temple, because you couldn't smoke in the temple and be disrespectful, but you could chew. And they had spittoons in the temple. You can still see pictures of it on the internet where they had these spittoons. And like I said, Brigham Young drank and even had a whiskey distillery. So mind-altering substances, or fighting for liberty, and standing up for what is right, be it liberty or moral conscience. There's nothing wrong with that. The apostles did it. Jesus did it. And then as far as Mormons are concerned, all of the founders of the Mormon Church did it, and many of the prophets and apostles, even after the founders, did it, all the way up till 1914, as late as I can tell, in the Mormon temples in Salt Lake Temple. So I think that people who want to be on their high horse and look down on me for supporting legalization of cannabis, or getting the government out of our lives and stop regulating our every actions and what we consume, and even Matthew 24, I believe it says, let those who would tell you what to eat and drink not obey them. Let not those or let not anyone tell you what to eat and drink and who to marry. That's what it says. You read the scriptures, and I believe it's Matthew 24. It could be 22, but I'm pretty sure it's Matthew 24 that says that. And don't let anybody tell you what to eat, drink, or who to marry. That's bull. The Pharisees used to do that. You want to be like a Pharisee, you start looking down at people and telling them what to do and how to do it, and who to marry and what to drink and what to eat and how to live your life. You go ahead and do that. That's your that's your beef, with God. You're going to have to answer to your Maker someday, and He's not going to be looking down at me. He's going to be looking down at you, because you're the one that's passing judgment. Judge not, lest ye be judged, right? So I think that people make a big deal out of separating themselves from one another and saying, oh, well, I'm better than you because, and you're this and that because, and you couldn't possibly be a reverend because, and this and that. And let's talk about Utah, the Mecca of Mormonism. We're going to talk about how they have low usage of illicit drugs and alcohol, right? They do. That's true. They have lower than a lot of states in those areas, but they lead the nation, they lead the world in prescription drug abuse, and that's the truth. That's a fact of the matter. You look it up. Utah doubles the national statistics for prescription drug abuse, and the United States leads the world in prescription drug abuse. So Utah leads the world in prescription drug abuse. That's a fact. Where I grew up in Springville, Utah, you can look at the Springville.org website and look at their city meeting minutes for March 18th, 2008, and they have 0.7% higher abuse rate of prescriptions in Springville than the rest of the state and the rest of Utah County. So that's what they say, according to Pat Byrd and Lieutenant Carlson and all the others that were, and the mayor, in fact, at that time, said the same thing in those meeting minutes. And those are from statistics that you can find in a lot of different sources, but that's one particular place. And so my hometown, where I grew up and went to school my whole life, they have the highest prescription drug abuse rates in the entire world. Worldwide. I'm not talking about, just nationwide. If Utah leads the county and the state in prescription drug abuse, and Utah leads the nation in prescription drug abuse, and the United States leads the world in prescription drug abuse, then that means that Springville, Utah leads the nation in prescription drug abuse. Now let's talk about the difference between prescription drug abuse and something like marijuana. There is no lethal dose for marijuana. According to the Center for Disease Control, and CDC.gov is where you'd go, www.cdc.gov, about 60,000 people a year are dying from prescription drugs, adverse side effects and overdoses. About 80,000 people a year are dying from alcohol, whether it be overdose or cirrhosis of the liver or whatever, side effects or direct effects. About 80,000 people a year are dying from alcohol, and about 425,000 people a year are dying from tobacco. But 0 people die in the entire world from marijuana. 0. It has a less addiction rate than caffeine, tobacco, even chocolate. That's a fact. It is not the gateway drug. That's been a proven fact. The only thing that makes it a gateway drug is the prohibition, because cartels and dealers have more incentive to push drugs on other drugs on people when they're selling them pot, because with pot being in the black market, you have to go to a drug dealer, and that drug dealer is not just selling you pot. Pot's one of the most benign things they can sell you, and it's very low addictive or habit forming rates, cause them to want to sell you something like crack or meth or something that has higher addiction rates so that you keep coming back. So the black market and prohibition that causes the black market makes the gateway theory possible. Without prohibition, marijuana is not a gateway to anything any more than milk or water is. But prescriptions, it has high abuse rates, high addiction rates, and high death rates, and it is a gateway. When you are a kid, for example, like I was when I was a kid, and I was force fed all kinds of crap, antidepressants, ADHD medicine, all kinds of stuff. And when I got out of my house, and I left early because I wasn't getting along with my parents, I left at an early age, and I didn't have those prescriptions anymore because I couldn't afford it, and I didn't have insurance that I could use. And besides, even if I did have insurance, I really couldn't afford it. So I couldn't afford to go to the doctor for the prescription. I couldn't afford the prescription. I mean, it was just a really high overhead. So I went, because I had habits and I had formed a lot of dependencies on these drugs that my parents had force fed me. I went to street drugs, that had similar effects. The ADHD medicine that I took, like Ritalin, is very similar to methamphetamine. And, for a couple of months I used methamphetamine. And, the other stuff, the psychotropic drugs like Wellbutrin or Zoloft, they have mildly similar effects to, heroin and cocaine and stuff like that. So, I did use that for a couple of months too. But some kids aren't so lucky, and they continue to use it for years and years and years. If you ask my parents, they'll say I was addicted to it for 90% of my life or whatever. They make up some crazy story to blame their lives on me. But if I was a meth head or a crack addict or something, you think I'd have nice teeth like that? You think I could speak this well and do well in business like I do? I don't think so. Drugs do ruin your brain, especially stuff like meth. So that's just not true. But it is true for a lot of people who leave home and experience the world and don't have the money for the doctors and the prescriptions, and they turn to street drugs because they've already formed habits as children. So yeah, prescriptions are a gateway drug. Marijuana is not a gateway drug. Prohibition is a gateway, but not marijuana. So I think that people go hysterical over something like marijuana. Well, and we can talk about this even further, because this became a religious insult. And when I got these emails from people, look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 29, basically the first page of the Bible. It said, God gave us all of the herb. Let me quote this directly and accurately. It says, God gave every herb that bears seed for us to use as meat. God gave every herb that bears seed for us to use as meat. Every. Not God gave us every herb that bears seed except for this, this, and this. Not true. No. God gave us every herb that bears seed. All of them. For us to use as meat. We know that cannabis cures cancer, according to Harvard, Brown University, Southern California Medical Institute, and others. Andrew Preet from Harvard is the first one that I learned about that discovered this. Look up Andrew, I think it's A-N-J-U, Preet, P-R-E-A-T. Cannabis has been found to have a compound within it, a molecular compound called cannabidiol. And they can extract this cannabidiol and inject it into a tumor cell, and that cannabidiol will cut off genetic feeding paths for the cancer cells that grow, so that they can no longer feed and grow, and it will reduce the size of the cancerous tumor. And that cures cancer. That's a fact, and it's been reported by many physicians in many medical journals all around the world, and in the major, Ivy League colleges and other colleges in this and universities in this country. So I think that it's a moot point to criticize somebody for marijuana when especially when you don't know anything about it and never tried it. You can talk about all the sin and all the this and all of that all you want, But that's just you looking down on other people. And the police, you know, who try to enforce these laws and try to talk about how awful marijuana is and how awful this and how awful that is, well, they get paid by the federal government to do and say these things, to arrest people for these drugs and to say the things that they say about marijuana. You take the DARE program, for example, which is a sponsored program by the government. You look at the federal anti-drug grants that municipalities get. Not all municipalities get these federal anti-drug grants. It depends on how many arrests they get. So the more arrests they get for marijuana or other drugs, they get more grant money from the federal government. So they have financial incentives to demonize marijuana. And that's a fact. You just look it up. They also, you know, when they find you with some marijuana and they say, well, you have so much in your possession that you probably intended to sell. And then, you know, if they can, you know, make that point, then they can also seize your assets, your house, your car, your whatever. And so then they can sell those assets and put more money in their departments. So, you know, and then the people lobbying for the drug laws are like the prison, the private prisons. I think it's Correctional Corporation of America, CCA. They are a private prison and make some $60 billion a year off locking people up in their prisons. And they've been spending tens of millions of dollars every year for mandatory minimums and new and improved drug laws. And what that does for them is it makes them more money. And so there's a lot of reasons why people demonize marijuana. You know, some people demonize marijuana so they can look down on you. Some people demonize marijuana so they can make money. Some people demonize marijuana so they can fit in and, you know, have that mob mentality like with religion. There's a lot of reasons behind it. But at the same time, they don't do the same thing and they don't say the same things about prescription drugs. And they're so far more deadly and more addictive and more problematic than any illicit drug you can find on the streets, and that's a fact. So I just wanted to clear that up. Yeah, I do call myself a reverend. I didn't do it for, you know, notoriety or leading anybody or, you know, absolving or, you know, erasing my past. I'll fully admit to my past, and in fact I think my criminal record is public, and I don't have anything on my criminal record more than a misdemeanor. And as far as I understand it, I don't have anything on my record more than marijuana. That's all I got on my record is marijuana, you know? So I'm not ashamed. I do feel strongly about marijuana. All the things that it, you know, treats or cures, asthma, emphysema, glaucoma, Alzheimer's, and look that up. It promotes brain tissue growth. Believe it or not, you look that up, it's a scientific fact. Alzheimer's, all these aging issues like arthritis and you know, intractable pain, cancer. It treats, not only does it treat the side effects of the chemotherapy and the radiation and helps you eat and helps you, you know, deal with pain, but it also cures cancer. Cures it, gets rid of it, eliminates it, and thousands of other issues as well. I personally use it for cluster headaches. I have a vascular restriction in my brain. It's a narrowing of my blood vessels in my brain. And when I use marijuana, it does just like it does with glaucoma. It opens up the blood vessels and relieves the pressure. And that's why it helps glaucoma. It's the same reason for me, you know, that there's the same reason it helps me is the same reason it helps glaucoma patients. But there's thousands of things that it helps with. And the fact that there's no lethal dose, and the fact that you don't even need to smoke it. I usually use brownies or tincture or something like that. You don't need to smoke it, and smoking isn't good. I don't care what kind of thing you're smoking, but smoking is never good. It can hurt your lungs, but it doesn't cause cancer. That's a fact. It may hurt your lungs from the heat and the smoke, but it does not cause cancer. It does not have carcinogens like tobacco does and things. Anyway, that's my thought on marijuana and religious issues and all that. Just remember, nobody's perfect, and judge not lest you be judged. Peace.